Welcome to Up on Game presents Taylor Scouting. Coach Randy Taylor is bringing his 40-plus years of knowledge to you. This is Taylor Scouting. And now, here's Coach Randy Taylor.
Thanks for joining me again on LeVar Arrington's Up on Game Network's Taylor Scouting. This is Coach Taylor, Coach Randy Taylor, and I am going to talk about coaching coaches as an athletic director and the role of the NCAA in the athlete's development. Now, I'm not going to do this myself. I am going to get an expert. Today's guest is Ron Prettyman, who has been the athletic director or an athletic director at every level of college sports there is. Ron has also worked as an executive director at the NCAA, where he managed championships for all levels of competition. Welcome, Ron, on the Up on Game Network's Taylor Scouting podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be with you guys, and I think that this is going to be a fun thing to do today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. What we try to do, Ron, is give an inside scoop behind the scenes of things like winning and competing and recruiting, coaching football, and really all sports, including men's and women's sports. So we're going to go into some different things that you have been involved in because you, like I said before, you've been in every level at the AD spot and at the NCAA spot and a different task, because they're both tasked with assisting young men and women become adults and leaders. Is that right, Ron?
Yeah, that's correct. I've been an intercollegiate athletics administrator for 41 years, and I've seen thousands of lives changed by the fact that they've had the opportunity to play the sport that they love. So many of the student athletes that we've seen go through our programs probably would not have gone to college if it hadn't been for an opportunity to play sports. And it's very rewarding often to see those young people come back with their families or with an established career and watch them develop into contributors to our society.
The one thing I know about you, Ron, over the years, and we've known each other in as much as a lot of business-related, college sports, athletics-related relationship, is that you always have the athlete's best intentions at heart, and everybody needs to know that. So I want to talk about, as an AD, the one thing you have to do is coach the coaches and the staff. Is that how you see the role?
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody needs a coach. We all need someone that'll pat us on the back when we do well, and somebody that'll kick us in the rear end when we don't do well. And we also need somebody that'll care for us regardless of the outcome. So I've been blessed to work with hundreds of coaches over the years. I've challenged them to be role models with their student athletes. But I've seen our coaches literally have a huge impact on thousands of student athletes in my 41 years of athletics administration.
Is hiring these guys and women, men and women, it seems like there's an art form to it. How do you find the right fit for your programs?
Well, fit is the right word. I'm glad you used that word. It's an ambiguous word. There's no measurement to what that means, but it might be the most important thing that you do as an athletics director, because you're placing student athletes in the hands of people that are going to be their leaders as the head coaches. It's a subjective evaluation. I can remember hiring a football coach at one point. This was a crucial hire for me because our program was in shambles. And I went out and I went to that coach's location. He was an assistant. He was a coordinator at the time. And I went onto campus. They didn't know I was coming. Nobody knew who I was. I talked to people in the hallways. I talked to student athletes. I talked to custodians. I talked to secretaries to see if that person had the right fit, so to speak, to work in our program. I'm not going to hire somebody who I don't already know is going to be a good tactician of the game. And so what I want to know is I want to find out if that person is going to be a good role model, a good person that'll work well with our student athletes, that cares about academics, And I did end up hiring that person, and he's now at a Power Four, coaching at a Power Four institution. So it's a the fit part is more about who they are as a person than what they know as a football coach.
I think you've touched on a couple of the things already, but I'd like to talk about philosophy and goals. Do you have a guiding philosophy that helps your coaches reach your program's goals?
You know, in a typical year, Randy, I'll sit down with a coach before the season. We'll talk about academics. We'll talk about behavior. We'll talk about goals and objectives. We'll talk about wins and losses. But if you know me, it doesn't take long to understand what I stand for and what I expect. And like you said earlier, student welfare is my top priority. And I want every student that goes through our program to have a life-changing experience. That's what happened to me. I had a life-changing experience playing intercollegiate athletics at a small NAI school, but it set the standard and it set the tone for my life and my career. And I want every student athlete to have that same kind of opportunity. So yeah, I make it very clear to the coaches what I expect of them, and it's not the same thing for everybody, but it is certainly something that is clearly delineated and discussed at the beginning of the season.
So the communication of those goals is probably really, really important as you talk about this. What do you expect from your coaches? So how do you communicate best? I know you have meetings and I know you have discussions. Is there a uniqueness to any communications that you have with coaches?
Well, coaches need to know, just like our student athletes need to know, coaches need to know that you care about them. They need to know that that you will do all that you can do to help them be successful. There's nothing that makes me prouder as an athletics director than to see my coaches succeed. And that's what I want to do. So I have to be very intuitive with seeing what's going on behind the scenes. I have to have a good understanding what's going on in our coaches' personal lives, that make sure that if they're struggling with something, that it's not carrying over onto the to the practice field and to the field of competition. And so it's a lot more than just a boss employee relationship. It's a tight knit, close relationship that has to be worked with to make sure that the goals are being met. So no, I don't really have a hard line. Every coach has to do this, or every coach has to do this. It's all individual based on their abilities and their talents. We've had coaches that have inherited bad programs and have built them over the course of time into successful programs. And those goals are a lot different than somebody who has come in and has a very successful program and is trying to sustain it.
What's your vision of a successful coach?
I think a successful coach is someone that can go home every night and say, I made a difference in that young person's life today. A successful coach is a good role model for students. A lot of our students don't have models at home. The coach is the leadership figure in their lives, and our students often will watch those coaches closely. They'll emulate their actions and their attitudes. And whether we like it or not, coaches live in a fishbowl on and off the surface of competition. You and I both have many friends that have made mistakes over the years that have cost them their careers. And it's because they made poor decisions. Well, when you choose to take on this profession, you put yourself in that situation of having to make good decisions at all times. And I guess my moniker or my recommendation to any coaches out there that are looking to advance is be careful how you live your lives on and off the field, because eyes are watching.
There are a couple different kinds of coaches. Some of them are into, they're yellers and screamers, and others are kind of the more of a cerebral, I guess. And there's different guys. Do you have a preference or how does that affect your decision?
I don't really have a preference. I do like a coach that can communicate well, and usually yellers don't communicate well because it means that they can't find the words to motivate their student athletes. Using our English language, so they have to use it by having a threatening voice. And so I'm not a big fan of a coach that yells a lot. However, I think that there are times for that. I think that there are times when a student athlete is either being disrespectful or is not paying attention, that you have to get their attention somehow. So that's why it's important that you have the right coaches in place so that they know when to use those different kinds of motivation. And yelling certainly can be a motivation, but it certainly shouldn't be the only motivation.
Yeah, I had a coach tell me, if I stop yelling at you, that's when I don't care.
That's right. That's right.
Hey, everybody in my family knows that story. Well, let's talk about the NCAA for a minute. What's their mission in your mind? And I think we kind of know it, but from somebody that's worked inside.
Well, I think the NCAA, I think there's somewhat of a misnomer out there because the NCAA is kind of a clearinghouse for intercollegiate athletics. The NCAA often gets blamed for things, but the NCAA is governed and run by its membership. And so the only thing we did at the NCAA office was we looked at the legislation, we made recommendations on the legislation, and then we enforced the legislation that the membership passed. So it's not like there's a bunch of people at the NCAA creating all of these rules and regulations and so on. All of these things are voted on by the membership. And so we've certainly had strong leaders at the NCAA. We've had weak leaders at the NCAA in the past. And I know that the NCAA is going through a tumultuous time. There's been some dramatic changes in legislation in recent years when you start talking about name, image, and likeness, and transfer portal, and legalized gambling, and student athletes being considered employees, the elimination of APR, which measures academic excellence, all of those kinds of things. College sports is changing before our eyes, and I hope we can survive without compromising the integrity of why the NCAA was formed as an amateur sports organization.
You had mentioned the membership, and just so people are clear, the membership are the universities and colleges that are a part of the NCAA, and then there's the NAIA, and there's different organizations. But I just wanted to be sure that the folks watching knew that the NCAA membership are the colleges, not the athletes, not the coaches, but the universities.
That's correct.
How do they make decisions? We kind of been talking a little bit around it. Is there it's coming directed from the college ADs or the faculty reps or whoever it's coming from, and you take this information like the NIL, like the transfer portal and APR and all those things, and those have been transformative changes that we've seen in quite some time. Is it there? So how do they make the decision on that? And is it something that they make a decision where they know they might have to go back and tinker?
Sure. Well, I've been in the unique position of being a Division I and Division II athletics director, as well as an athletics director at the NAI level, as well as being on the executive team of the NCAA. So I've kind of seen it from both sides. And there aren't very many people out there that can say that. So again, the office staff does what the membership legislates. What we did was we would make recommendations to the membership. They would discuss it. There's dozens of committees at the NCAA. I know when I was an athletics director at Division I served on 2 or 3 NCAA committees. We would get recommendations from the NCAA office, but ultimately it was our committees made up of the membership that proposed the legislation and then moved it forward. I've seen this membership model excel and also fail. And often the membership gives the NCAA way too much leeway to make some of these kinds of recommendations and decisions. There are a lot of people at the NCAA that don't have great experience on campus, practical, boots on the ground experience, and they're sitting in the office making recommendations and decisions that are going to impact literally thousands of young men and women that play in our universities at this point. So this needs to get cleaned up quickly. I think there's going to be a tough decision ahead about how necessary the NCAA really is in our world of Power Four conferences. And I'm not sure if we don't clean it up really quickly that there are going to be some dramatic changes of separation from the NCAA.
Let's just talk. Let's get you to give us one specific change you'd make to the NCAA today that could help them go much further. And then I'll ask a second part of that is if there is no NCAA, what is there?
Well, the NCAA model is or was a pretty good one. You need some sort of continuity. You need some sort of staff to oversee. My responsibility was managing 17 NCAA national championships, including College World Series, women's volleyball, men's ice hockey, FCS football, Division I football, and 17 total sports. But I think my recommendation would be that the Power Four probably needs to leave the oversight of the NCAA. When I was at the NCAA, I was the liaison to the college football playoff organization, and so I would interact with those folks a lot and work with them. We were responsible for all the rules. We were responsible for all the eligibility. We were responsible for all the officials, so on and so forth. But there was little or no power that the NCAA really had when it came to the actual implementation of the playoffs. And so I think that the CFP now has made enough money that they could have their own staff to manage football in the Power Four conferences and do what they need to do, have their own enforcement staff, have their own legislative team just for the sport of football. My fear is that football is going to dominate so much and people are going to keep pouring so much money into football that the Olympic sports are going to suffer. And we're already seeing so many schools dropping sports as they try to fund the revenue producing sports, and it's impacting thousands of young men and women that aren't getting a chance to play the sports that they love.
What do you think? Well, let me ask this question. Then I'd like to see what you think should happen or would happen if the NCAA was no more. The NIL and that has been a huge reason to increase the amount of money raised by these universities. And not everybody can do that. Now, you've been talking about the Power Four, which is interesting because it used to be Power Five. So first tell our folks, who are the Power Four?
Well, the SEC, the ACC, the Big Ten, and the Big 12. With the transition from with the transition from all the schools from the Pac-12 to the other various organizations, the Pac-12 will no longer be in existence. It's going to be
amazing.
It really is, because it was called the Conference of Champions for a reason. More national championships in that conference than any other conference in the country. So it's been hard to watch that happen as a West Coast guy.
Yeah, and the idea that the Pac-12 or whatever number there are right now is having great success in football and normally does in basketball and what they call the revenue sports. So it doesn't make sense but it is what it is. And so what would it look like if the NCAA was gone?
Going back to what you just said, nearly every one of these decisions have been made because of the almighty dollar, not necessarily student athlete welfare or what the best situation is for student athletes, but it's because they can make more money and more revenue and continue to enhance the programs that they have. I do not actually foresee the NCAA ever being totally dissolved. I think that it could take a backseat to a CFP managed football program, but you're always going to need somebody to be involved in enforcement and legislative rules and amateurism and academic excellence and those kinds of things. And I think that there is certainly a place for the NCAA there, and that if the cards are played right, we can have the best of both worlds. We can have the CFP championship with all those CFP teams, the Power Four teams, and we can have we can continue to do a good job with championships for all of the Olympic sports that are out there as well.
Yeah, Olympic is better than non-revenue, right? The way
that's how
words
say it. Yep.
Words mean things. Yeah, I would think that that you're kind of like the IRS. The NCAA is kind of like the IRS in many ways. So it's definitely needed, which makes a lot of sense. But I guess we are going to find out, whenever that all happens. But depends on what the TV companies say, right? The broadcasting.
It's all driven by that. It's too bad, but we've sold our soul to the almighty dollar. So,
hey, you and I should. One of those places needs to pick us up to work on whatever the heck we could do for those TV companies. You would be great on the Saturday night talk show.
Well, this is fun, Randy. I enjoy working with you. I did way back in the day when we were on the same staff together, and I appreciate the opportunity to be involved here today.
Well, I know you got some things coming up in your life, which is exciting, and I look forward to watching you, and you do an unbelievable job helping kids and coaches. So I want to just say thanks, Ron, and appreciate your friendship. And we're gonna wrap up this segment of the Up on Game Network's Taylor Scouting Podcast. Make sure you guys subscribe to Up on Game Presents on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Please rate and review us. Follow us on all social platforms by searching the Up on Game Network. And then you can follow me on X at rtaylorfbscout. And you know that you can reach me through Up on Game Network and taylorscouting.com. So love it. Love having you guys on. You can also, don't forget, you can watch the full episode of this on YouTube. It airs at 9 a.m. Pacific time on the Up on Game Presents on Friday. Thanks. My director back here told me to remember Friday. Anyway, so appreciate you, Ron, and I look forward to talking to you again. Thanks. Take care.
Thanks again. Have a great day.
You too.